Welcome to the Owning Your Sexual Self podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Main, awesome wife and dog mom for life. I'm a sex therapist turned sex coach, and I run a successful business selling relationship enhancement products. I absolutely love talking about all things sex. So you can expect this podcast to explore all things related to women's sexual health because that's what I'm here for. I'm here to help you discover and embrace what brings you pleasure so that you can own your sexual self. If that sounds good to you, then keep listening and let's fucking do this. I know I have a ton of parents out there that are just thrilled to be listening to this episode today. So just forewarning, this is obviously something by the title you can tell. If you don't want your children hearing this right away or people around you hearing it right away, I definitely advise you to pop in some headphones because we will be talking about sex and porn today. But more so in a way that is a conversation that is going to help you either now in your current life or maybe in the future, help you navigate these conversations with your children when it comes to porn. So today's guest, I'm very excited. Scotney Young and we actually went to University of Michigan Sexual Education School together. And so she is actually a sexual health educator herself and also a licensed graduate social worker. And she works inclusively with sexual health. She does a lot of work in prevention. She currently works as an intimate partner violence prevention specialist with a local domestic violence agency in the Northern Virginia and DC area. And she's actually originally from California, and she holds a bachelor's degree in psychology from Sonoma State University, and then again that master's degree in social work from Boston University. And then, just like me, has that postgraduate certificate in sexual health education from U of M. She currently lives in DC with her husband and adopted dog, which I just love so much, and she loves sci-fi, superheroes, and really cheesy action movies. I love when our guests share fun facts about themselves. And so today's conversation with Scotney, I'm telling you, if you're a parent or you're planning to have kids and you have this fear of talking about porn with them, or maybe you've caught your child watching porn, or you find it on their laptop or their phone or whatnot, this episode is going to give you so many helpful tips on how to navigate those conversations, how to embrace that awkwardness, and really move forward with your youth in a positive way. Because as you've heard me say many times, if our kids are not getting these conversations and this education from us, where else are they getting it, right? What's your alternative? So super excited for you to listen to today's episode. If you want to reach out to Scotney, all of her information is linked in the show notes, as well as a ton of resources for parents specifically looking for help on how to educate their kids or have conversations with their kids surrounding the topic of pornography. So enjoy today's episode. Hey, Scotney, thank you so much for joining me today on the Owning Your Sexual Self podcast. I'm so excited to be talking with you today.
Yay! I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I was just when I was kind of sharing with the listeners where we met and stuff, we're both from that University of Michigan Sex Educators program, and it's been super cool to talk to so many of our cohort members in the last few months and just hear about the work that they're doing. We all come from such diverse backgrounds in that program, yet all have a very similar goal in mind in the work that we're doing. So tell me, what are you doing now in your sex world, and what sort of sex magic are you making happen nowadays?
Oh, well, as you may have mentioned in my bio, I am still doing sex education work. I finished the University of Michigan program and moved to Guatemala with my husband, who's a foreign service officer. So we moved to different countries every couple of years. But in Guatemala, I was able to connect with a small nonprofit organization that taught sex education to low-income, marginalized youth who live in kind of unofficial or informal communities around the city trash dump. And so there's a really high cycle of poverty and teen pregnancy, a lack of education around sex, sexuality, and contraception. And so this organization, it's called the Guatemalan Youth Initiative. They do amazing work training peer educators, as well as offering non-coercive contraception. And so I was able to team up with them as a consultant and help improve their education program, as well as develop. They're kind of growing. They've been growing in popularity, and so helping them grow. And so that was a really awesome experience. And so I was there for about a year, and now I'm a member of their board of directors. And so we recently moved back to the States, and I found a job with an amazing domestic violence response agency. I'm in the DC, Virginia area, and so I am a domestic violence prevention specialist. So I focus on doing workshops and programming around healthy relationships, consent, healthy communication. So in order to change social norms that make space for or allow domestic violence or intimate partner violence, so that we can shift those attitudes and beliefs and create healthy relationships free from violence. So that's kind of what I'm doing now. I do a lot of kind of freelance sex education work as well. I'm in the process of getting my ASEX certification as a sex educator, which has been a fun process. So yeah.
That's awesome. And so with the primary focus of all of your work, it sounds like in as a whole, it's a lot around that prevention and a lot around promoting healthy, positive relationships within couples.
Yeah, definitely. And especially I tend to work mostly with young people and parents or people in parenting roles. I really like working with young adults, teenagers or college age students. They're at an age where this is a very present topic in their lives, sexuality and sex education and reproductive health. And so I really enjoy working with that age group and helping them develop the tools they need to have healthy relationships for the rest of their lives.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. And so I'm curious, because our conversation is really going to be geared towards sex and porn on today's episode. So the work that I do, when I ask people, and typically it's males, but when I ask them about how they remember learning about sex or how sex was first introduced to their life, a lot of the times the answer is porn. And when they follow down that path and they continue getting their idea of what sex should look like from porn, we know how that can cause issues. Well, you and I know how that can cause issues, later in life and in the more long term. So does that come up common where this is where they're learning about sex is through porn?
Yeah, absolutely. That comes up all the time, especially just with the prevalence or it's just, porn is just ubiquitous. It's everywhere. It's so easy to access now. Anyone with a cell phone with internet could see pornographic or sexually explicit content. And because for a lot of us, we live in societies or communities that see sex and sexuality as a very taboo topic still, and one that people don't always want to discuss with young people. They try to find answers in other places, and oftentimes that leads them to pornography and sexually explicit material on the internet, which often is really void of context and any type of educational structure or framework. And so you have a lot of young people, not all, but but many young people who are looking at porn to figure out what they like, what they're quote unquote supposed to do, or what's expected of them in sexual relationships and sexual interactions. And porn is not educational. It's designed for entertainment purposes, and there's a lot about the production of it that young people don't fully comprehend. That's not to say that nothing can be learned from porn, especially for people who are in marginalized bodies or have different types of have different sexual orientations, have different ways of expressing their sexuality, different kinks, fetishes, things like that. Porn can have some educational value if they're in a place where they can't express that part of their identity openly, and they really don't know what it looks like, or who to talk to about it. So in that case, people can find some helpful information on porn, but it's not designed for education. And so that is something that a lot of young people don't fully understand. And so I've recently done a couple of workshops specifically for parents to help talk to the young people in their lives about pornography, and help them think more critically about that. And there's a lot more kind of educational curricula and lessons and frameworks and things that are being developed now to help young people think about pornography in a more critical way, and give them the tools to do that, because educators in particular are realizing that you can't avoid this topic. You have to talk about it.
Yeah, and so when you're having these conversations, let's start with from the parent side. What do you hear mostly from parents who are wanting to have this conversation? What are their fears? Just in general, what's coming up for them?
Yeah, it's definitely, anytime I mention to anybody who has kids or has kids in their lives that look up to them that I am a sex educator, one of their first questions is always about porn.
Mm-hmm.
Almost always. They're just like, oh, you're a sex educator. Like, what do I say, if my kid is looking at porn, or what if they're looking at porn that I don't like, or, a wide range of variations of the same question. And so it's something that a lot of people in parenting roles are thinking about and kind of struggling with. I think something that comes up a lot for them is, at least that I've encountered, is people are afraid that if they bring it up, it will entice the young people to go looking for it. Mm-hmm. And so I'm grateful that there's actually a lot of research that shows that's not true. And so I'm always happy to point people in those directions, because that is evidence-based, that talking about pornography or sexuality with young people does not make them want to experiment sexually more. Mm-hmm. It does not really make them, want to go look at porn. There's like a funny meme that I saw online that was like, oh, now that my mom talked to me about sex, I really want to go have sex. Said no one ever. Yeah. And it's just like, yeah, no one ever thought that. And this is information that young people are getting from all types of different places. So you bringing it up will not be the first time that it's being brought up, but that does tend to be a concern that a lot of people in parenting roles have, as well as, just not knowing what to say. Mm-hmm. They're like, I don't know what to say. I don't really know how I feel about it. I just don't like it. So yeah, those are definitely some common challenges.
I love that you mentioned that too, the fact that having the conversation with your children about anything sexual in general is not going to make them go out and want to have sex or go out and search the porn. And this came up in another conversation that I was having earlier this week with another cohort member, and she said the exact same thing. And the vice versa of this is, if as parents, if we're not having those conversations, what is the alternative? Where are they going to get that information? My second episode on this podcast was the fact that I learned about sex on the playground from another classmate, which thankfully she gave me pretty accurate information for the most part. However, it could have been so different, it could have been so misleading or caused me some sort of shame or guilt around anything that I was experiencing. So when you're providing this information to parents, when you say something like that, oh, okay, that makes sense, do they, for the most part, hear that, actually hear that and listen to that?
Yeah, some people do. Some people are still just very concerned. And I think part of it just comes from the awkwardness of talking about mm-hmm. something that for them has been very taboo, and then to bring it up. and so they might just be looking for a reason not to. And so I think part of it is being honest with ourselves and being okay being in that awkward space with our young people and letting them know, like, I'm not sure, I don't have all the answers, but this is something I want to talk about. But also, I think that's why it's so important to give parents tools to have these conversations in a way that makes it a little bit less scary for them. One way is having smaller conversations, right? Or some people call it like micro lessons or whatever. It doesn't have to be like, okay, we're going to sit down at the dinner table and have this big talk. It could just be when you're watching TV together and, there's like a love scene or a kiss or something like that. And, asking them like, oh, have you ever seen anything like that before? Asking them questions that make them think about the people, the emotional element of what's happening, along with the physical element, because sometimes young people don't always realize that sex is more than porn, right? There's a lot connected to sex and sexuality that is not shown in porn. Having those conversations that lead up to having sex, talking about what you and your partner like, just the physical logistics of having sex, and like, falling off the bed or hitting your heads together, or, all kinds of things, or using lube if you need it. All of these things are not often shown in pornography. And so it's important to help young people start to think critically about what is not being shown, not just in sexually explicit material, but in the TV we're watching or media that we're watching about just relationships in general. And so giving parents those tools to be like, okay, we can start small and then work our way up, helps to minimize some of those fears and discomforts that they have around that. But yeah, it's exactly like you were saying, like if our parents aren't giving us some of that information, or at least letting us know that they're a good resource to go to on sexuality topics and we can trust them, then where are we getting it from? I know right now a lot of people have been watching Bridgerton. I don't know if you've seen it.
So good.
Yeah, so there's on Netflix, there's like a lot in that show about talking about sexuality and reproductive health and consent and pleasure and all of these concepts, and there's a really big kind of arc around, if your parents aren't telling you what you need to know, that really puts you at a disadvantage for owning your own sexuality and your own reproduction and all of these topics that are really important to being a fully actualized person.
Yeah, and also making decisions and choices that align with your values. Like if you use that example from Bridgerton, like the mom literally like sent her out into the world. I know we say that like we're sending them off, but legit she was like sent out into the world with no sort of knowledge about how babies are made, and yeah, that was I love that show for many different reasons, but I like how they showed the very common but what you don't want to happen from that daughter to mother sort of relationship, or even just parent to child in general. And then on the positive side of things, incorporating and owning the self-pleasure aspect of it and talking about sex before it's happening and engaging in fantasies and things like that. Like, I thought that show just did such a great job bringing a lot of things to the surface and making people think about things differently.
Yeah, and hopefully, it's one show or one place that I've seen where, talking about sex as it relates to pleasure, but still in the context of, consenting adults and relationships and or marriage. For some people, that's really important. For a lot of people, it's not. But, talking about this, you mentioned values, like that's a big part of the workshops that I do for parents and porn is helping parents identify what their values are around this topic, because you can't really share them with your kids if you don't know how to verbalize what your values are. If it's just a feeling, it's kind of hard to pass that along without finding words, especially age-appropriate words that make sense for your kids. And there is research that shows the more that you can't tell your kids what to think, especially as they get older, but the more that you share your values with them openly and talk openly about them, the more likely they are to share similar values as well. And so it's definitely takes a little bit of self-exploration and education on the part of the parents or the individual, the adult, so that they can then more adequately transfer that to the kids and explain that to the kids in a way that makes sense.
And is a piece of that also letting the parents know that the porn that they like might not be the same as the porn that their children are watching, or they might despise the type of porn that their children are watching. And I want to also, before I forget, ask like what type of age these kids are generally, but knowing that it's okay for your child to have a different belief than you or value than you, and being okay with that, going in with an open mind and really working hard to not throw that shame or guilt on them, because we know, again, that how much of an effect that can have in our later adult lives.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big part of it. And I think that, that is an important caveat. Like, legally in the US, you have to be 18 to view pornographic content.
Right.
And so there is kind of some gray area there of, there's no real way to enforce that with the internet. So young people do see porn, and for some, I think that's an important value to explore for parents first and foremost is, do you think, is there ever an appropriate time or type of porn to watch? Is there appropriate age to watch porn, or kind of circumstance that it's okay, like, it's okay if you watch it with your married partner, or it's okay if you watch it by yourself and don't tell anyone about it. Like, whatever your value is, you want to think about, how you want to share that, because if your thoughts are, I don't want my young person ever watching porn, like, that's something that you're going to need to explain to them, versus, I don't think they should watch porn until they are 18, or until, or unless it's ethically made porn, quote unquote, like ethical porn, which is porn that's typically made with an emphasis on fairly treating and compensating the performers, as well as the crew, and often tends to try to portray a better representation of diversity, as well as to highlight more female pleasure. And so ethical porn is porn that some people also call it feminist porn. So it kind of, there are options out there, or for some people, they're like, I don't want my child watching porn at all, but, if they read an erotic fiction novel, I'm okay with that. Like, so really thinking that through ahead of time, and not all at once, you don't have to do that exploration all at once, but just a little bit at a time can help guide the conversation as well.
What is the general age of the kids of the parents?
Yeah. So it kind of just depends. Typically, when parents ask me about this, their kids are like 13, 14. Another question that comes up a lot is, are they watching it too much? And there usually is some element of self-pleasure or masturbation as well. And so they're like, is my kid masturbating too much?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's an awkward question for them, because they're like, I don't know, I don't want to talk to them about it, because I want them, so for some parents, they're like, I want them to have autonomy over their own body, whatever. but I'm worried about that. And so that comes up. So I do try to also emphasize in my workshops when I'm talking to parents that, first of all, there's not a general consensus among sexuality professionals or researchers that porn addiction is, or that addiction is the proper framework to look at some of these compulsions through, if that makes sense. The proper framework to view it through. And even ASECT, the American Association of Sex Educators, Counselors, and Therapists, they do not recognize porn addiction. They also see it as a sexual compulsive disorder. And so, not to say that viewing porn, that you can't develop an unhealthy relationship with, the amount of porn that you view, because you can, and it can cause a lot of emotional distress, and that's the most important element of diagnosing sexual compulsive disorders, is that emotional distress. Is it causing you emotional distress? Do you want to stop and you can't stop? Is it impacting, your normal functions and your normal relationships and responsibilities? Is it getting in the way of, you doing your homework or doing your sports or whatever other things that you enjoyed doing in the past, and you're lying about it a lot? And all of these are kind of red flags that maybe there is more happening there that you might need professional help with. But emotional distress, just to clarify, does not mean that you are embarrassed about the type of porn that you like. That's a different type of distress, and that has more to do with shame and lack of communication and lack of acceptance and those types of things. But I'm talking more about kind of as a compulsive disorder. Are you under distress because you can't stop and you want to? That would be a point where you would want to seek help. But
and would you agree that it's the person that gets to make that decision? Nobody else gets to make that decision for you, whether or not you are engaging in too much porn or too much masturbation or too much sex.
Yeah, I think just like any sort of disorder or mental health disorder, the people who love you and who are around you might have a different perspective on your behavior or how it's impacting your life, and they can always offer that perspective and that insight, hopefully in a loving and kind and supportive way. But ultimately, it's your decision if you feel like that is something that you are struggling with to make. Even with young people, I personally believe that young people have the capacity to make those decisions for themselves, and let the adults in their lives know if they need help or they're not sure what to do. But it is also still like the role of parents and trusted adults to let their child know that they're worried, and them support and ask questions and have conversations.
Yeah. And I love what you brought up too earlier about it doesn't have to be this one big conversation where everything is talked about. I like the idea of it happening more organically. And if you are watching a movie together, something comes on TV or a song over the radio, and just having that open-ended question come out, like, what do you know about this? Do you have questions about this? Have you ever seen something like this before? I think that's so much better. It's like it's sprinkled in throughout, and now the parent is becoming that trusted person that if they were to come across something in the future that they have questions about, they know that they can go to their parent without being judged,
Yeah, exactly. And that's why, having these conversations without judgment and without punishment is really important if you want to keep that line of communication open. And then also being honest is really important. If you lie or make up things and they find out, they're not going to see you as a credible source of information anymore. And so, admitting when you don't know something and getting back to them when you figure it out, that's all really important. And then I did remember what you were asking about, like the type of porn that people are watching, and if, a parent has issues with the type of porn that their young people are watching, that comes up a lot. And I always say, first of all, if you're having open conversations with your young people about porn and sex and these sexuality topics, letting them know that what your concerns are can sometimes open up the conversation in a way that allows them to let you know why they're interested in that, and it might not be why you think. If they're interested in a certain type of porn, you're like, why are you watching this porn about stepbrothers and stepsisters? Like, what what is the deal? And it could just be it was the first thing they found, or it could be like, I'm not really interested in the story. I was interested in this particular performer or actress or whatever. And so having conversations, if you've already opened up those conversations and you feel comfortable, that's a good place to start. But then also just letting them know what your concerns are so that they start to hear that and think about that for themselves. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes it could just be like, I don't want you watching porn, it makes me uncomfortable, like, or whatever, versus, saying something like, I am concerned that some porn portrays, women as objects, and that I don't want you to get the wrong idea about how to treat, your future potential partners because of what you see in porn. And then that really opens up the conversation because it lets them know, like, oh, you're worried about them and this is why. And then they can start to hopefully form their own thoughts around that and use that lens when they are exploring pornography or sexually explicit content in the future.
Yeah, I think that's, a great point. And you had mentioned too, there are some either websites or resources that you could share that you typically give to the people that you're working with. And there's something that we'll definitely link in the show notes too for people to visit in the future if they'd like. But do you have a few of those that you could recommend right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I'll definitely send you that link with just a list of resources specifically for this topic for parents who want to talk about porn. One of my biggest, inspirational sex ed heroes is Dr. Nadine Thornhill. She's Canadian. She's a sex educator. And she talks a lot about how parents can talk about sex and sexuality with their kids in just a very realistic and genuine way, and how to use the media around us as conversation starters for a lot of these topics. So she has really cool YouTube channels. Nadine Thornhill, you can find her on YouTube or Instagram or all of that stuff. Another resource that's easy if you don't have a lot of time or you want to put something on while you're driving, the 6-Minute Sex Ed podcast by Kim Cattle. That's pretty great. She breaks it down she has lessons by age. So, and she says at the beginning, this is good for teenagers, this is good for, middle schoolers or younger kids, elementary school kids, whatever. And then it's just 6 to 10 minutes of information on how to talk about some of these topics. Or you could just play it and it's something that you and your kids could listen to together. So that's great. Nice. And then for sex educators in particular, or sex therapists who are looking to kind of expand their knowledge, I really like Dr. Bianca Laureano. She is a sex educator. She's also an ASECT supervisor. She's my supervisor currently. But she has a course called Annie Up that's all about media literacy and inclusion, intersectionality, and really expanding on sexual health and sexuality education topics for sex educators. So I recommend her as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We'll definitely link those in the show notes for people to be able to easily click and get to. And if anybody wanted to reach out to you directly, how do you prefer that they contact you?
You can always email me directly, scotney.young@gmail.com. And I am on Instagram. I unfortunately am not very good at any of the other apps, but I'm working on it. But you can find me on Instagram at scottbot321. That's SCOTBOT321.
Love it.
So yeah, find me there, or just email me, give me a shout out. I'm happy to always answer any questions or connect you to other resources.
Great. Thank you again so much, Scotney. This was an awesome episode, and I know that I'll get a lot of people just very grateful that we had this conversation today because, as I said, porn, we live in a pornified world. It's everywhere. It's so easy to come across, whether or not you're looking for it or you are looking for it. And so I think that this has been great and a great tool for parents now to have these healthy conversations and go into these conversations more organically.
Yeah, I hope so. That's always like the best advice I could give is the more you talk about it, the easier it gets.
Yeah.
So it starts out awkward, but I mean, just keep having these little mini conversations, and you're sending that message to the kids in your lives that, you're open to talking to them about this, what in a way that aligns with your values, but you're still open. Mm-hmm. And so that's the most important thing. And so I hope that's helpful for someone out there.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you again so much. And I, again, just appreciate you coming on today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Rachel.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you loved it, be sure to subscribe so you never miss a thing. And if you loved it so fucking much, be sure to leave a 5-star review. I'll see you next week, and until then, keep owning your sexual self.